AR Chargers, this is Chuck Jackson. I'm the Division Commander for 4th Young Marine Division. I presented a breakout session on team building at the Adult Leaders Conference. So what I wanted to do is just voice over the slides and make a video so you have something to reference. Now, there's a couple things I'd like you to know. The first is, if I say something on here that makes you feel uncomfortable or upset or even vindicated, I want you to think hard on why it did do that. See, self-awareness is a key to some awesome leadership. Roger that? Next thing I want you to know is that, yes, I'm in this program for the kids, but at the level that I lead, I'm also in this for the program, which includes the registered adults. Now, I do have slides which will be uploaded to National's website on team building for the Young Marines, which I'm not presenting right now. I'm here for you, and more importantly, the Young Marine program. Good go? And the last thing is a great quote in James Allen's book, As a Man Thinketh. It states, "The world does not give you what you want. It gives you who you are." So I'm going to embellish it a little bit and say the world does not give your team what it wants. It gives you who your team is. So hopefully as I go through these slides, you can see weaknesses or strengths in your team that you can either build on or maybe areas that you need to augment and make a little bit stronger. What type of team are you building? I'm going to go through two different types of teams as an analogy. One is a golf team and one is a fire team. Now, on a golf team or bowling and even some units I've seen, each person is responsible for their own performance. Now, although the team wins or loses as one, they play as many, and it's just not that effective when it comes to leading. Now, here's some markers of units that run as golf teams. The first thing you notice is that RAs are siloed into specific jobs. Now, that in itself isn't bad. Division of labor is good. But what happens is they won't sign off because they don't know the movement or they don't know the knowledge. There's way too much dependence on the UC, the XO, or the TO for troop movements and discipline. My point is, if an 8-year-old can be trained in basic young marine knowledge, an adult can. You may not be the primary, but you can be a good secondary to help fill in. The next marker is UCs, TOs, XOs are not delegating authority. Now, at no time should they ever delegate responsibility. You just can't do that as a leader. But there's a lot of times when the UC's life could be much easier if they delegated authority to their team members and empowered them. Another thing you see is not mission focused. You know, I always hear people say, "Oh, I'm in it for the kids." Well, that's nice. Let me challenge you. If you're really in it for the kids, you'd be developing yourself, studying, reading on your craft of leadership, teamwork, and discipline. All of us should at least be able to score 80% on the basic book. But since the adults are siloed, what you'll see is the senior young Marines form their own clique and the advanced young Marines form their own clique. You know, it's just not true mentoring of our basic and junior young Marines. It's called fractured leadership, and things fall apart. The next thing I see happen is the gaff off the responsibility for leadership, teamwork, and discipline. And they put it on the UC or the TO, maybe the XO. In other words, when they see a discipline infraction in the unit, instead of the registered adult addressing it themselves, they go up and they tell the UC or XO or TO to take care of it. Now, how are the kids going to respect the registered adults if they don't hit discipline at the point of the foul. The last marker is leadership is learned and practiced. So if teams aren't doing this, then leadership isn't being learned and it isn't being practiced. When RAs fail to exert their leadership, they don't learn. If they don't learn, they don't grow. And if the RAs aren't growing, the unit isn't growing. There's a great story back in the 1950s. There's these two brothers that started a little burger joint. They were awesome managers, and they had processes and procedures down like you wouldn't believe. I think they built their business up to about $250,000 a year, which is a great sum of money back in 1950, even today. But every time they tried to franchise their little restaurant, it always fell apart because they didn't have leadership. And it wasn't until a milkshake salesman named Ray Kroc came in, bought the McDonald's name, bought the processes, and exerted leadership to where you see McDonald's growing as big as it is today. Now, whether you like McDonald's or don't, that's not the point. The point is McDonald's did not grow until the law, the lid, the leadership level of leadership grew within that restaurant. And it's the same for your units. Until leadership grows in your units, your unit will not grow. So let's take a look at the other type of team, a fire team. See, where in golf, we play as many and win or lose as one. On a fire team, or if it communicates better, a football team or a basketball team, you really play as one and win or lose as one. See, you'll never see a quarterback fumble the ball and the center just goes, "Oh, sorry, that's the running back's job," and he doesn't jump on top of the ball. So even though the leadership is command structured, because you have to have some intelligence directing all the different parts, the authority gradient is pretty flat. I'll explain more in the next slide. So here's some markers on units that run as fire teams. The first one is communication. Not just frequency of communication, but quality. And I got a slide on that later. The next marker is called power distance, or a flattened hierarchy. The leader is more in the servant leadership role, vice the authoritarian role. Now, no one doubted that Arthur was king, but his inner circle, his staff, sat at a round table. There was no head of the table. That way they could talk and discuss things as equals. They became real in their conversations, and they'd bring up gripes and grievances there and not let them fester. Another marker is they're mission focused. They get the big picture, and that'll be covered on another slide. They have the momentum, and so much momentum that little disagreements that happen from time to time, they don't stall and they don't destroy the unit cohesiveness. Another marker is they enforce the standards of the Young Marines. They're not afraid, because they can communicate honestly, they're not afraid to call each other out when somebody may be just twanging the edge of the ram. And number 5, leadership is learned and practiced. The unit grows its leadership lid by studying the core values on their own. They're attending UMCs, ALCs, working with other units to either learn new ways of doing things or imparting new ways of doing things. So there's a cool little story I'm going to tell you. And I know it's kind of silly, but this is how it goes. See, it was the coldest winter ever, and many animals died because of the cold. The hedgehogs, realizing the situation, decided to group together to keep warm. This way they covered and protected themselves. But the quills of each one wounded their closest companions. After a while, the hedgehogs decided to distance themselves one from the other and they began to die off, alone and frozen. So they had to make a choice: either accept the quills of their companions or disappear from the earth. Wisely, they decided to go back to being together. They learned to live with the little wounds caused by the close relationship with their companions in order to receive the heat that came from the others. This way, they were able to survive. This is the point. In a functioning unit where you have communications, you have a flattened hierarchy, you're mission focused, all members are enforcing the standards and leadership is growing and you got that momentum going, the little disagreements, the little wounds, the little pricks from the quills from your fellow RAs, they really just don't bother you because you're so focused on working as one, as a fire team, and accomplishing the mission. The next thing I want to talk about is the law of the big picture. That's a gorgeous view from the top of Pikes Peak. It's a mountain in my backyard. It's about 14,000 some odd feet tall. So the law of the big picture is the why, the what, and the how. In Marine Corps terms, we call it the mission. Every successful business, company, corporation has a very defined why. Our why in the Young Marines is to positively impact America's future. And what do we do that with? We do that with kids 8 to completion of high school. And how do we do that? By keeping kids off drugs, out of gangs, and in school, and we teach leadership, discipline, and teamwork within a Marine Corps culture of honor, courage, and commitment. This is the big picture. This is why when young Marines come back from JLS, SLS, ALS, they are so stoked because the big picture is constantly being hammered into them. The big picture can be referenced as vision. And vision leaks. You see, in vision, in the law of the big picture, the goal is more important than the role. Too many times when we see people riding the drama llama, they have that totally reversed. They make the role more important than the goal. See, members must be willing to subordinate their roles, their personal agendas, in order to support the team vision. By seeing the big picture, effectively communicating the vision to the team, providing the needed resources, and hiring the right RAs, leaders can create a more unified team. See, if you don't constantly communicate the big picture, the leaders in the team, the outstanding RAs, will do their own things. And the followers, the ones that aren't leaders, will create a little social club. They sit in the back and they just complain about life. The big picture has to constantly be stressed at the UC level, the battalion commander level, the regimental commander level, and even at division. We have to constantly stress why we are doing what we do. The law of the catalyst. Just like you see in this picture, people who are catalysts within the unit, within the team, get things moving. They start the dominoes falling. Catalyst players are easily identified by the initiative they take. If you have RAs on the team that are catalysts, you have to make sure that they have the empowerment to take the unit to the next level. And you also have to make sure that you just don't rush them out. Too often we give work to the busy people because they get it done. Many times this can be the UC, the XO, the adjutant, the TO, and they work them until it's just not enjoyable anymore and they rust out. Every member needs to ensure that they are contributing to the team. Utilize those catalyst players in the best positions you can to achieve the goals and the mission that you have set for your unit. The law of communication. Now, in the law of communication, I would say that a good 50 to 60% of the grievances that I get are where registered adults are just not communicating amongst themselves. And this includes having hard conversations. Conversations can't always be nice. You have to be able to be mature enough to sit down, not get emotionally compromised, and have those serious hard conversations with each other when those quills, remember the hedgehog story? When those quills give you a little bit of a wound. You see, the reality is you're only really listening to 7% of what I say. The other 93% of communication is speech rate, tonality. If I had a video camera on me, you'd see my hand and body gestures, visual clues like the slides, reactions and emotional cues of people around you. So about 93% is basically nonverbal communication. But we lead by email and text. Now, I love email and text, but in truth, it is really good for presenting facts and nothing else. Honestly, even though communication is one of my top strengths on Strength Finders, I don't think I've really developed it to the point it needs to be regarding communication with my regimental commanders and division staff. So even though this is an area I am strong in, I have growth opportunities and plans after the ALC to intentionally grow to make this area more strong. It includes setting intentional calls to my division staff and regimental commanders on a fixed basis. How many times do the battalion commanders call the units? And how many times a month do the regimental commanders call their battalions? And then I can even ask the question, because I know this is a weakness in mine, just being transparent, how many times does the division call the regimental commanders? See, interaction fuels action. Effective teams have teammates who are constantly talking and listening to each other. From leader to teammates and teammates to leader, among teammates, there should be consistency, clarity, and courtesy. People should be able to disagree openly, but with respect. Between the team and the public, responsiveness and openness is always the key. Now, a lot of times what I see where drama starts up is the team really doesn't know what type of decision the UC is trying to make. Is it a command decision, like maybe there's a safety issue, where he doesn't want any input or she wants any input, and they just make a decision? Maybe it's a consult decision where the UC is trying to get the opinions of others, but that UC is going to make their own decision. Or consensus decision where everybody agrees where certain resources or funds may be going. Or even a voting decision on maybe events or just the majority vote rules. See, it behooves the UCs to state beforehand what they are seeking: command, consult, consensus, or vote. And then the key is, once the decision is made, the staff has to get behind it fully. You don't have to like it, you even don't have to agree with it, but you must support it so there's no fractured leadership. The only caveat to that would be a safety issue. You know, many of our units, actually, in a sense, really all of our units, are run just like a pirate ship. Back in the old days, the ship's crew would elect a captain, and that captain would then be tasked with taking care of the crew and going out and raiding, getting all the gold and silver and everything else like that. Now, when a captain failed at his duties, the crew would probably kill him off, or at least throw him off the boat and elect a new captain. Now, I'm not saying that if our UCs aren't fulfilling the mission that we should throw them off the boat. What I am saying is maybe it's time for a new captain. Now, that's a hard saying. We know that per the RAM that 2/3 vote, you can elect a UC. If you can't get 2/3 vote, maybe the problem isn't the UC, maybe it's you. Now, I've been in a lot of meetings, even division commanders meetings, where good ideas go unexecuted. See, until it is documented and executed, they only remain good ideas. There's probably enough ideas in your unit to double its size. The problem is, do we have the solid leadership or fractured leadership? Do we have the discipline and the teamwork and the resources in order to get it accomplished? So whenever you have your meetings, make sure you turn those ideas into actions. Who? Assign the task by name. What? Specific deliverables. Is Joe Smuckatelli going to deliver Umpty Frats at a specific time and date? Right? That's the win, the time limit or deadline. And then on your next unit meeting, successful units have a great follow-up. In other words, we should follow up on all those ideas, all those tasks, the deliverables that have been assigned in the past before we move forward with other ideas. And that in itself is a law of communication. Hey, I really appreciate everybody listening to this short little team building lesson. I think I've given enough resources that you can start to improve your teamwork in your own units. You just got to remember that the music has to match the words. You have to follow through. Go back through this, see areas that you're weak in that you can build up, and see areas that you're strong in that maybe you can make even stronger. Until then, Semper Fi, and have an awesome day.